Okay. All right. So if you could just begin with stating your name and the years that you attended Westchester.
Okay, Kathy Johnson, and I attended September of 75 through 79. So I was there for the 70s, late 70s.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So what would you study at Westchester?
I was a public health major, so I have a BS in public health.
Very cool.
It was a fairly new major when I went there. I think it's been around. They were one of about 20 some that were offering undergrad in public health. So.
Cool. What made you choose that?
I had always been interested in health and had thought at one point that I wanted nursing. And I really wanted to go to Westchester. My sister had been there. She was a freshman when I was a senior. And I, fell in love with that. And their nursing program was very difficult. There was only like about 20 some slots. And so the actual, I guess it was admissions had said, to get in there. Some people had gone and tried to transfer in, but said that was really extremely difficult. But, I had all the grades and everything to get into Westchester, but did say that there was this very interesting public health major that made me more interested because it had an opportunity for health administration and to take it a lot of places. So I then went to Westchester and signed on for public health.
Awesome. So that obviously influenced your decision to come to Westchester, that program?
Yes.
Very cool. They actually, like Westchester's, their nursing program still to this day, it's phenomenal. I have tons of friends that are nursing majors and do some crazy stuff. It's very cool. So how do you feel about your decision today? Is it a good call coming to Westchester?
I think it was a great call. Coming from back then, I come from a large family and my dad was, you can go to a state school or, feel free to pay any difference with any private school. But with my sister having been at Westchester, it was great. It was still, I live in the Philadelphia suburbs and, far enough that would be living away, but close if we needed to come home. And, the campus I thought was beautiful. And so it did have everything as opposed to traveling to some of the other different state schools that I saw out there. And I still to this day, it's amazing. I think how Westchester, has even grown and come and, and I've driven by, not walked through campus, but to see how it does maintain. I think it's beautiful too, as far as the campus and, walking through the quad as the quad was still there and all the different buildings. So
Absolutely.
Being a public health major, I did spend a lot of time down at South Campus too. So, and that was, I don't want to say new back in, 75, but was really big, new, beautiful buildings where they were doing all of their health, the PE health and health education programs.
Right. Cool. So where did you live? Did you live on campus? Were you a commuter?
So I lived in Schmidt, and Schmidt was right on the corner. So that was great where you could, hop the bus. Although freshman year, I think it really was a lot of general ed questions. And so I was there for freshman year and half of my sophomore year. And then my sister, who I had said was a year older and was moving off campus, and they needed a spot because you had to, share with a lot of roommates in order to be able to afford it. So she and some of her friends that were sophomores, and then myself and one of my good friends moved into Franklin Court. And I would imagine it's still there. That is over by Ramsgate off of Franklin Avenue. So the small building, it had about 2 floors. And I guess there was, I don't know, maybe about 24 units down there. I was 6A Franklin Court. And actually years ago, my sister and I were back for an alumni day. And as we're driving by, the door was somewhat open. So we did run out and there were a bunch of guys that were living there and they were very kind and they let us walk in and see.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Actually, my current roommate, we way back saw our sophomore year, we tried to get an apartment in Ramsgate, but we didn't know how quickly those apartments go.
Very quick.
Yeah. So we ended up I live now on right on Market Street.
Right.
Our old apartment was right on Church.
Right. So speaking about the Rat, everybody wanted to be in Ramsgate too, because, you were right down the street and around the corner from where the Rat was. And then, of course, there was Jake's Bar too. So it was, Jake's Bar and Grill was just down on the corner. So it was you know, absolute great location. We got in because we had guys that were seniors that I knew that were moving out, and we were able to somehow, I don't know if we subleased or something, but whatever, whoever, it was a smaller landlord or whatever, and we were able to jump in under them before it went back on the market because, as you said, Ramsgate and all of those went fast.
Yeah, they go quick.
Yeah.
So what'd you do in your free time? Either on campus, off campus. What'd you like to do? Were you in sports, bookworm, that kind of stuff?
I would say that I, you know, not sports, because, you know, they were pretty competitive. Although my roommate freshman year, she was very athletic. So she played field hockey and lacrosse and was that. So I was not into sports, but being the public health major, we did volunteer work. So at that time I had, we had to do, I guess for one of the courses, you had to do something. So on campus they had, and I don't know, it's becoming controversial, but they had a Planned Parenthood clinic on campus. So I volunteered, and there was a lot of the nurses that were there, that we were there. And then, you know, that was just for a semester, but was very active with them. So I stayed on, and then I went up into town and continued to do volunteer work for them in between. And then there also was a senior living where you went and you just visited with them. And that was part of one of the next courses that I took as part of volunteer. So I think I spent a lot of extra time doing that. Then, of course, it was just social with friends, you know, going out and involved, and trying to think of something jumped into my head of something else that we did, but working, that's what it was. So then so then it's like, all right, so now if I'm not doing sports, let's do some work. So I guess it was sophomore year, and it was when we moved off campus, because I remember mostly walking across. Freshman year, I did not work, but worked in the cafeteria, got my little penny or whatever, because you needed to eat when you lived off campus. This was second semester, sophomore year. That was the best thing. It was to work in the caf. And, you know, so worked in the cafeteria, although it was like one of those, I don't know, it was an interesting job, but, you know, it certainly then it gave some cash, and then it did allow us to eat. And then by junior year, we got a job that was, you know, and it just fit some of the volunteering and with the public health that we did. A friend of ours had driven for, I guess they were called First Step. It was one of these preschool programs for not necessarily handicapped kids, but they ran a preschool program. Anyway, they had a little shuttle bus, and she did morning and afternoon pickup of the kids, where they would drive around and the parents would come out. And so I did that, and it was just so rewarding. My sister did that too, because these children, they would come, you know, they would like give you hugs, you know, we would be driving them on the bus, and we would sing songs. And then also would get to ask to volunteer, or I think they paid us if they had a need for, you know, a substitute teacher, and did some field trips with them. So did that junior year. And then senior year, when I was, I guess, of age to serve alcohol, would have been 18, no, 21. I guess we could serve alcohol in Pennsylvania. Anyway, I was a waitress at the Courtyard. So I worked. So I had many different jobs that kept me busy and besides class and studying.
Very good. Yeah, busy. Yeah.
I'd like to say bookworm, but you know, whatever. I graduated.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Decent grades.
So, okay, so what would you say were the best bars to go to? You night on the town, where are you going? What are the best spots?
So, I mean, obviously before age, there were the different fraternity parties that would have been like, you know, freshman year, sophomore year. Then there were, you know, a lot of different house parties. So Walnut Street had a lot of people that had different houses on Walnut Street, and of course Ramsgate. And then downtown, people did, it seemed like it would be more upperclassmen that lived in the apartments that were downtown, as opposed to some of the people that I knew, you know, in the sophomore year. Then certainly when it was, and everybody waited, you couldn't wait until you were able to go to the Rat. I mean, it was Thursday nights at the Rat. So getting into that story, it was like where everybody went. And so you couldn't wait to go there. And so Thursday nights, you know, were at the Rat. Now, my freshman year, and it kind of petered off. I don't know how much we might have went sophomore year. And I don't know if it's I think it's not even there, was the Anvil Inn. So if you've done research on old bars, it's out in Kennett Square.
Yeah.
And the Anvil Inn was in Kennett Square. And it was one of these that, I am talking, but that it was very negligent as far as the carding process. I don't even remember if they carded, but like it was somewhere that if you were like a freshman or sophomore, we're not 21 because it was 21.
That's what we got.
That you could get in. So we would load into my one friend's Volkswagen with like, I don't know, 7 girls or whatever, and head to the Anvil Inn. They would have goldfish drinking contests and things like that. Now, we didn't do that every Thursday because you needed a car, but that was one, and started to phase out, I would think, by my sophomore year, or as the Rat was around and more people were going there. So, other than, socializing with friends, either small or at parties, it was going there. We were down the street from Jake's Bar. Jake's Bar was not necessarily your Thursday and Friday place to go, but they had their big, long shuffleboard table that was there. And, I had a lot of friends then that lived in Ramsgate and then lived in Franklin Court. So, you would go down there and you would hang there. And so that was around. And then in town, I'm trying to remember the one name of the bar where like the rugby guys used to always go. And that was where I would go before I was 21 because I couldn't get into the Rat. And can't believe that I can't think of the name of it. It was an old place and I'm not sure that it was there, kind of a big old place that was, and didn't go there also every Thursday because it was, a bit of a ride or whatever to go to town. And it was, when I think of Westchester, more on the end of town that you'd be heading out of town towards like Downingtown area, but there was a place there. And the manager, too, he was, and I'm trying to remember his name. If you've looked and done the research up,
the owner, Bob Bale.
Was that him? And then there was another guy though, I'm picturing him, if it wasn't who managed. I don't know. Yeah, I'm bad with names, so that's not many years ago. So.
I just came across his name actually. He was the original owner, and then Bob Bale took over just a few years later. I'm blanking on his name too.
Okay, so it might have been him. Yeah, so we knew them. So this time of the Rat was when the bar was just downstairs. So that was, I think all through my years. Then I would go back because in Westchester too, I'm not sure where you're from. A lot of us were, out here in the Philadelphia area and suburbs. And then my good friend lived in Westchester, and she had married a guy that was at Westchester. So for Alumni Day, we would go back every Alumni Day, and we'd of course always go to the Rat, and there would be a lot of people that were there that we would see. And then they had added the bar upstairs because it had just been a pizza place upstairs and the bar downstairs pretty much while I was through college. And then they had expanded, and they still had half of the upstairs for pizza and cheesesteaks, because we also ate, our cheesesteaks at 2 a.m. too for the walk home after you were out all night. And when we had heard, I will say that it was closing, I mean, we were devastated for the Westchester kids. Like, how could you go to Westchester and not have the Rat? I mean, that's how much a part of, it was of the college experience, I think, for, those of anybody that does want to go out and, attend to any of those types of, bars. And they had great, it wasn't a DJ, so I guess they were just playing a soundtrack or whatever, but, they had it in the downstairs. There was a big square and, dancing. So people would do a lot of dancing. The end of every Thursday night at the last song they played, it was, oh my God, it was The Last Dance. I don't know if you might know it. It's one of those, Donna Summer's The Last Dance. I don't know. Girls might know that or whatever. But that was, and everybody went out for The Last Dance. So it really was, just a fun time. My other part of this story was that being a public health major, I took all the, the biochem and, all the types of science courses that you need for a health major. And I had microbiology, and not necessarily an easy course. And then they gave me microbiology lab at 8 a.m. on Friday. And it was taught by a TA. So I went and I asked if I could switch into, they had it Wednesday and maybe one other day. And I think he knew that I was going to be out Thursday night because he did not let me switch to Wednesday. I'd have to get up for microbiology lab on a Friday at 8 a.m. So that was also one of my downsides, I guess. My punishment for whatever it was, senior year I had to spend in first semester microbiology lab.
All right. Okay, so walk me through like a typical night going out to the rat. You know, like you get up, a group of friends, you're making the trek over there. Starting outside, is there what's the line look like? Is there a line to get in?
So, well, you know, back we did have 4 roommates, so at one point we even had 5. So, you know, it was getting together, you know, pretty much with the roommates because everybody would be going and it would be getting ready. You know, although we were not as fancy as some of these girls that I see, oh my goodness, going out in their midriffs and heels. And I mean, you know, back when I was there, we dressed pretty comfortably, but still getting ready or whatever. And that was the big deal. And you know, pretty much everybody was doing that. And I think based on schedules and if it was classing or studying, you know, you headed over with, you know, a group or just, you know, one other friend. Pretty much always headed over with someone as opposed to myself. But I would certainly know that there would be a lot of other people there from, you know, some of the other different apartments that we were there. I don't necessarily, we did not wait in long lines the way I've seen, you know, how some of these college bars are. But you would have to go, you know, like I'm thinking of outside. But then because you were going downstairs and down the steps, like the time that, you know, I was carded and all of that, you know, I was up the steps and they were carding people. So, you know, we got into, you know, so somewhat of a line, but not like waiting, you know, 15, 20 minutes or something like that, you know, and getting in. But, you know, certainly it was, you know, maybe up the steps and around or something like that, depending on what time you got there. When I was working at the courtyard, which was my senior year, we really would be able to walk right in because we would finish the dinner shift and myself and my friend. So getting ready was always like, all right, time to get ready. You know, we're heading to the rat and we would get over there at around, you know, I mean, almost 10:30 to 11, but, you know, it was there till 2 o'clock or whatever. And we were, you know, making the tail end and, you know, would just walk right in. So, but yeah.
Very cool. So once you get down to the basement, what do you see? What's like the general kind of layout as far as you can remember?
So as you came down the steps, the place would have been off to your right, and at the bottom of the steps is where the bouncers would be. They did have bouncers sometimes out by the front door too. So depending, you would either have bouncers at the bottom, maybe they were both too, watching you come into the front door, but you really were carded down the steps because I have such a memory of that being carded, and that was down at the bottom of the steps. And then you would turn and you would go in and there was, I guess it almost was like a corral. You know, there was a big room that went like a whole rectangle on the way back because you went down the steps and you turned in and the whole place was a whole rectangle off to the side. So when you went in right in the center, and it was, I guess it was fenced. I'm calling it a corral if they corralled us in, but that was the dance floor. And then there were not tables down there because everywhere else then there would have been some people that were standing to this. And then the bar was a long bar that was straight up against. So if you're coming down the steps, I guess there was a wall there. The bar was inside a whole big long bar. And there was just a little, and again, people stood at the bar there. Maybe there were seats there at some time or during the day. I don't really recall. I believe everybody kind of went up to the bar and stood there, you know, like a rectangle bar that might have been like, you know, a few seats if you had seats, and then you went down really long and then it came in with a couple other seats. So you would make your way up to the bar. So walking in then it was really to find whoever was there. And, you know, it was number one, the group that you're going with, but then of course you knew so many other different people. So it was just, you know, a lot of hanging out, catching up, talking with friends. And then depending on what the songs were, then, you know, going out and dancing. So it just was, you know, a good time by, you know, dancing and hanging with friends.
Cool. So what I've picked up so far, it was very dark in there, right? Like it seemed
Yes,
to be very dimly lit.
very dark. Yes.
And
Yes,
then
most bars were. So when you went into bars, then they were dark because, then we would call at 2 a.m. Oh, the ugly lights are on. It's what you might have heard that, but
yeah.
as far, so if I think of everywhere else that I went, but you would go down.
And then here's a weird question. What about the smell? Because it's the red. You're going downstairs. It's in a basement. There's lots of beers around. Do you remember did the red have like a distinct smell of any sort, or
I am going to say that, and I am one that, like my husband says, I have a nose and smell everything. I don't have a distinct, I'm sure that it did. And I'm sure that, if you would go down during the day, like you walk into any bar when it's empty, you're like, oh my God, this smells like a college bar. Or it did. And I just knew that that's what it was, that it wasn't, quite as bad, because like that would be something that I think that if it was really bad, that I would remember, but was just more expecting it to be like that, because that's what it was.
yeah,
So, and I mean, and we drank beer. I mean, that's really, again, now, I mean, I know the kids these days, and I've had my young daughters, and they were all drinking vodka. Now, if you went to the frat parties, they did have that grain alcohol awful punch that was just like, you drank that like one time and then you never drink that again. But like the way you young people drink mixed drinks and things like that, we really weren't. Now, I mean, they did have liquor there because there would be people doing shots, if you're doing something like that, but, mostly so it was a ton of beer that, I know that I and, mostly my friends and all of that really were drinking there. So you certainly had a raunchy beer smell in that place, I'm sure.
that actually leads perfectly into my next question. Is what was your beverage of choice? Obviously, it was beer, but
So it really was beer. I mean, we didn't even, it wasn't until I was really done college that, went to, and it was even like a wine spritzer that we went to something that was like wine. I know, I remember going to one of these guys' place in Ramsgate, and then he was like, "Oh, did you want some wine?" I was like, "Well, yes, that's nice. We'll have some wine." But again, and this was what I believe really most of my friends. Again, there would be different shots because I remember. And I always thought this was terrible. I did not do 21 shots when I said I got shots because, couldn't. And they would be like, oh, and then they would do like, I don't even know, like some of those, like whatever they were, sweet things or something like that. But people did. So I would imagine there was probably some of that. And maybe there's people that I wasn't really hanging with that did, more, but really mostly beer.
yeah, like I remember reading they had it was mostly like Genesee, right? And maybe
Tennessee.
Heineken,
Tennessee cream ale.
cream ale. There you go.
Jenny. Yes.
And then what it was like 50 cents for a cup, right? Something like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everywhere you went back then, it was like, under $1, or, it was 18 in New Jersey that you could drink. So while we were there, and that's why it was always frustrating being in Pennsylvania, because, if you would go down the shore in the summer or something like that,
Yeah.
they would have, which was a little bit scary, like in Ocean City, the Anchorage, 7 for $1, and you would get, and that's what the Anvil Inn did. They had it was like a 6 for 1 or something like that on Thursday nights. And you would get, now they would be like this skinny drafts, you know what I mean? Like that glass that would be like this, that would come in, that would be like a skinny. And, I don't know if it, even held a full 12-ounce beer or something like that, but you would get, yeah. So it was probably about 50 cents or something, I mean, you could go with a couple bucks and you were good.
I know. Best thing. The only bar that still does that is Jake's Bar. That place has not changed. Probably
Okay.
if you walk into it now, it would be probably the exact same. It's the only place where you can get dollar Coors Lights. It's a
Okay.
dollar for a mug, or $6 for a pitcher. It's like,
Wow. Okay. Yes, we'd get pictures and do bowling over there and stuff like that. I don't know, we're shuffleboard bowling.
yeah. It's still there,
Okay. So,
Did do you remember if did the Rat run any kind of like drink specials, anything like that ever?
I'm gonna say I don't remember. And that's where I'm thinking that, maybe that was a couple of years later as people were getting more sophisticated as to what they were drinking.
Yeah.
In my time, because I would think if they were specials, then it's like, oh, I might have veered away from beer if this was going to be cheaper, the special or something like that.
Right.
So in my years, I don't recall that. Not to say that it wasn't there, but I don't recall that.
Okay. What about, okay, so let's take it back a little bit. So you came to Westchester in 1975, right? So the Rat opened up that same year. When did the Rat like really start becoming popular? And do you remember anything about, like, did you hear anything about what used to be there? The Pig was also called the Purple and Gold Tea Room.
So that's what I did. Okay, so I remember the Pig. So I thought that it was fairly new, and I was going to say it opened, but then I wasn't sure. So was it that year, 75 was the year that it opened? Okay.
Yes.
Because it was the Pig, and that's where upstairs they still had that. And they still called the upstairs the Pig, but the Rat was below. So I didn't know if it was that same owner because he owned the building. But I think we used to call because you would get the cheesesteaks, and I said the whole upstairs was what I recall that we did call it the Pig. And I remember that I had been there because my sister was a year ahead that we went there to eat. So when did it start becoming popular? It's why probably I started to hear about it. And as a freshman, you were still just, going to any kind of house party or the frat parties and those things. And sophomore year, when I moved off campus, which was second semester, and then my sister was a junior, which was the year ahead, then you started really knowing because I lived in Franklin Court and Ramsgate. And so that, that was becoming like the place. So just started to be aware of it. But, they were very strict. I mean, carded, and you had to be 21. So until I got brilliant with my idea, I was still just hanging at house parties. And there was a ton of them at Ramsgate was really how, when I think about, a lot of the social what I did then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, that's interesting. So the upstairs was still called the Pig, and
or maybe it was called the Rat and it was something, but everybody still called it the Pig because it had been.
Exactly. Yeah,
I'm going to say I don't know what the sign said because I remember there was like the Ratskeller or whatever it was sign that was out front. So, that whether that was, but it was like, get a cheesesteak or whatever. I think
that makes perfect sense, right? Because you eat. Because what else do they serve? They serve cheesesteaks, pizza, burgers, right? All upstairs.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, all kinds of fast food like that. Yeah.
So how, on that note, how was that food? Do you remember it being good, or was it just solely like it's 2 a.m.?
2 a.m. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was, let's get the cheesesteak when you felt like, oh, I still have enough money left over for that. Or then it was like, well, this really isn't that healthy to be doing this at 2 a.m. or whatever. But but I think the food was okay. I did not, from where I lived in Franklin Court, we went to, which I don't know if it's still beside Jake's, that was fantastic, Neal Street Deli. Is the Neal Street Deli still next door to Jake's?
No, now it's called Rigtown Pizza.
Oh, okay. So this was a Neal Street Deli, and they had the best, hoagies, and I mean, big, huge, fat hoagies, and he did cheesesteaks too. So we would head there because that to us was a better quality food than the Pig. And number one, it was closer too. So for, my daytime, we'll say eating, that's where that was. And then nighttime was maybe, just kind of the Pig. But when we came back on alumni day, when they had the bar upstairs and then half of the upstairs was still doing, food and sandwiches, I remember eating there twice and it was fine. And it was okay because like we had gone to the alumni day or whatever, and then wanted a bite. And then once that closed, we would go into town to like Iron Hill Brewery was first opened, and some of those places. Yeah.
When was that alumni day? Was that like a recurring event, or?
They had it, and I would assume they still have it every fall. They might even do a spring one, but we always went to the fall one, and it was associated with a football game. And then they would do a alumni day. I don't know if you want to call it a party or something like that, where the alumni house was right on Rosedale, is probably still is the big house there. They used to have it in the backyard, and they would have kegs of beer there. You would get like 2 drink tickets or something like that. You didn't pay. You came as an alumni or whatever. I don't think they even looked to see if you're going to Westchester. But then they had moved it, and they did it in a parking lot down at South Campus because they had the football field. And we went back when it was down there. So we really did go back for quite a few years. And I would say about, well, see, the pandemic makes so many years go by, and you don't think. I would say like 2 years before the pandemic or something, and we hadn't been in a while. Our friends that we hadn't seen for a while, but their kids were at Westchester, we did go, and because people were tailgating now. And I mean, back then we only just tailgated at the top of the hill, and you weren't allowed, and it was just small. Parking lots weren't like what I saw like a couple of years ago. So we did go back again. And then we went to Iron Hill Brewery for drinks, but then our friends said, is it Brennan's? No, an Irish place on the corner in town.
Let's see. Well, there's Ryan's Pub. There's Kildare's Pub.
It was, I think, maybe is on a corner. No, might have been Ryan's or Kildare's. It was Irish. We went to some. I said Brennan's, the wrong one. We went to one of those that was a college bar or whatever to make sure that we, got that experience again.
Very cool. All right. Well, you were just kind of talking about football. So I'm sure you probably remembered or maybe not, but so the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles, they used to have a training camp in Westchester. And I've read articles that have said that some players used to frequent the Red, actually. Did you ever spot a Philadelphia Eagle in the crowd?
Never, because like that would have been more in the summertime when they were doing their training. But I do know that so one of my good friends, and he's the one that they lived in Westchester, and he's a physical therapist, and he had really did more volunteer work. He was in a private practice or whatever, but worked for the Eagles for years. And like he even had, then got to where he traveled with them. So he certainly was at their summer training camp, and that might have even been how they got involved. But that his wife, who went to Westchester, also sister that did not go to Westchester but was younger, was visiting and was up there and did meet, and then was supposedly somehow sort of had a few dates with one of the Eagles. So, and we were all like, oh, we should go and watch them, training over there or whatever. But we never did. It was in the summer, and that, which is surprising that we didn't do that. What year did they start? I'm wondering if they started that after I graduated, because I'm now thinking, would we have known that and wanted to have done that? I don't know.
I haven't found too many dates. Like I've only really seen, I've only read mentions of the Eagles used to frequent the Red, or they'd be I don't know, playing there was a Pac-Man and all sorts of different games at the Red at some point, and they would just be kind of blowing off steam playing video games for a couple of hours after practice or something like that.
Right. You know what? I just looked it up. Preceding 80 to 95. So I graduated in 79.
It was
So
right
they
after.
did not come, and that's why I heard that after from my friends that were living in Westchester, and then it was her sister up there and hanging out. So they were not, because I am thinking, I know enough of the people that I was hanging with were all sports nuts and things like that.
Yeah, they definitely would have. They would have known something.
Yeah, and then and we would have thought, the training camp even then, to head there or something, because we were actually I did summer of, what was that, my junior year to summer year I just took one of the first sessions of a summer course. So I was there for half the summer or whatever. That would have been before probably training camp anyway. So they definitely weren't there. But had that place rented all summer because, needed it and would have certainly hung there. So, yeah.
Well, how about, did the Red have any other kind of themed nights ever? you can recall?
I'm going to say not that I remember that, Thursday was the big one and then everybody, knew to go. I would think though that they probably, and again, if they started in 75 and I would have been there, like 78, 70, 77, 78, 79, they're probably just getting started and probably started to do a lot different marketing to bring people in on other nights beside Thursday. So I don't recall, not to say they didn't.
What about the music? What kind of music did they play? Did they have, was it live music? Was it you said that they didn't have a DJ when you were there?
I don't recall a guy standing there spinning records, but I just remember that it was, somebody had to be, doing something that was, because it was on the speaker and, you went and you danced and it was, all of that kind of, music that was there as I'm saying. So that was, whatever the great latest hits were, it would have been dance music. And that's why I'm remembering Donna Summer's, Last Dance. There would have been, I guess, like a lot of the, God, I'm trying to think of, now what I like, I mean, and I love it, classic rock. So there was probably, I was just looking up, so it was probably a lot of the classic rock that was around then that we were listening to. And I'm apologize and, not really, if I just want to say, who did we listen to? My goodness, Bruce Springsteen. So I'm going to say there was, definitely Rosalita. I'm like, how do I not know the songs or whatever? That was always, everybody's out dancing to that. You know what I mean? So, because that's where Springsteen really came alive. The summer of 75 here in Philadelphia. Bruce Springsteen, actually, I saw at Westchester in 74 when my sister was there, and I was not at Westchester yet. I was still in high school, but came to that concert. And he still plays like 4-hour concerts. But when you think about it, it was in Hollinger, because it was a Hollinger Fieldhouse where they had the concerts. And we were like so close. And I just remember that, it was when Clarence Thomas played, and it was, probably like a 4.5-hour concert. So, it was certainly Springsteen and, all of that kind of, I'm thinking Phil Collins back then, but, that would have been not as dance music, but, the ones I'm thinking of that I'm like, oh, Neil Young, but, he wasn't dance music. So it's when I got to Springsteen. So whatever it was, like I would say the classic rock of, the 70s, a lot of that would have been more dance. And I guess there was some of the, I'm going to say Saturday Night Fever, because what years were that? And, that definitely was, dance music when you think of Bee Gees and things like that. So, it was whatever was around then, I would say that was dance music, they would play that would get people out there dancing.
Absolutely. I was just about to ask, like, oh, did they, I feel like I've read that they would do like disco nights and that kind of stuff during the
and that's why I'm like, so when did disco? I was thinking disco was high school, but no, that was disco. And like we might have thought, oh, disco because we were more classic rock, but you danced to it. So all of that, because that really was 70s. So it was, definitely those songs would have been the ones that would have been. Oh yeah, I just Googled "I Will Survive." Oh my God, that's the other where all the girls would go out. You know what I mean? I Will Survive, and all the girls would be out there. Funky Town. I Googled it. Yes, so it was all the disco music. YMCA, everybody would be out. Dancing Queen. You know what? It was a lot of I say classic rock. Boogie Wonderland. I'm looking at it. Good thing here. It's it really was like a whole kind of mix like that. And I would say a lot of what you would say, and I guess it probably was all kind of called disco if it was dancing, so.
Did they ever have a live music playing?
Not that I remember.
That was probably a little bit later. All right. Oh wait. Oh, okay. So maybe you can tell me about this. So I've seen a lot of ads about that talk about a 7 foot TV. Do you know anything about that? Or maybe it was just like a big projector or something like that.
I'm gonna have to ask my friends because it's like, boy, I was there enough nights, and if I don't recall that, I'm like,
Hmm.
and then I'm like, do they have a TV upstairs that you would have when they, because they really made an addition and did a lot to it. Um, right, and they were the years that we came back right after I had left. So I am not recalling that because I know when you go to concerts and you see all those big TVs that I would clearly remember that. So again, if this was their early days, they were just packing them in and making the money that, from that way. And probably, as they were expanding, I would say they might have added that after. So,
Yeah, because I'm just so like baffled about the 7 foot TV. I've never like seen like one that big, like in a bar nonetheless. But like
right, that's why I'm like, well, I'm thinking of that at a concert, that
I
I,
know, right?
like if there was a screen like that, that's what I'm saying. It would have been a problem if I don't remember it. And I don't remember that, oh, geez, really coming back either. Because I would have thought that I did. So, but what year did it close?
2005.
Okay. So, I mean, there was a lot of years then from, after I was there. So,
Yeah. The mentions of it, like they were early on. Maybe it wasn't until like probably right after you graduated. I'm trying to like look around here to see like the first mention of the TV, but um I'm not sure. That might have been maybe like early 80s. But um all right. Let's see here. Are there any other stories that are just jumping out at you that you remember?
no, well, I just remember someone getting in a fight with the bouncer, and I'm trying to remember what it was about. And it was like they were, one of the football players or whatever. And, so that was like a big deal. And there was, and I think that, so I'm not naming any names, but I think he even did a lawsuit or whatever. But, I don't know about putting some of this stuff on there, but that was like a big deal. Um, and what caused it or started it and who was to blame, I've got no idea. But, when you think about like, what occurred, because we were walking up when actually they came out with him or whatever. And it was like, oh, okay, we better, get away from this. But yeah, they really, they did a good job, and they really tried to, I think, yeah, maintain and keep, their integrity as far as, the bar, and not let things get too out of hand and too crazy, because it probably certainly could when you've got, that many young college kids. But it was pretty well maintained and a good time.
Yes. All right. Well, one last question. If you could pick one word to describe the rat, what would it be?
It was just a blast, just fun.